Well, I'll mention one more thing that worked really well because Johnny's not here. But that was his 3D wing that he welded up. I made one out of foam and it worked really well. He just basically cut and rewelded one of his wings so that the ends kind of came down like 6 or 7 degrees, I would say. And that's because if you put a 2D wing across the back of a Miata, the center portion of the wing experiences 6 or 7 degrees more angle of attack than the ends of the wings, just because of the shape of the roof line and the air coming down the roof.
Green flag.
Welcome to the Blind Apex Podcast, where amateur club racers tune in to get faster.
Of course, we buried the lead, so if you want to get your hands on this report, go to occamsracers.com. This episode is brought to you by DeechWorks Fuel Systems. Visit DeechWorks.com to fuel your passion. On this episode, we're going to talk about stuff I literally know nothing about. Not just the chassis, not the technical part. We're talking about Miata aerodynamics. It's probably the most popular chassis, most prolific car you will see in most of the paddocks. And they're voodoo to me because they don't have VTEC. They're slow as dirt and they look weird. But joining me, returning guest, I'll call him the Edgar Allan Poe of amateur aerodynamic white papers for now. He's maximizing his wind tunnel time and probably regretting not moving closer to North Carolina, but his bank account's probably not regretting that. Mario, welcome back to the podcast, sir.
Thank you, Con. Edgar Allan Poe, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Dude, should I have picked another author like Shel Silverstein? You don't write like Shel, so
I'll take it. That's great. Thanks for having me back on. I really wanted to talk about the wind tunnel testing we did recently, and by recently I mean almost a year ago. It took me like so long to put this whole thing together, as far as writing it. I don't know why that is, but it just did. And so let me tell you, like, just sort of briefly what the whole goal was. My goal in general is just to move the science of Miata aerodynamics forward. I started that in 2019 doing some some track testing at Watkins Glen, and then just writing articles and experimenting with shit, and these days now, like going to the wind tunnel. That's like how it started. And then when I saw we've been sort of relying on CFD in the Miata world. There was a group called, I think it was called the Hancha Group, and they did this neat little study on different types of front aero, like standard aero, lowered, aerodam, splitter, and they gave you all these sort of CD and CL values and how much downforce it made. And we all got excited about that, but no one really knew like the veracity of that CFD, right? Did you ever see anything like that?
I've trolled the internet for everything possible on aerodynamics because for the longest time my car was accused of just being super draggy. So I've been obviously trying to remedy that. So,
well, remind me of that in a second. We're going to come back to the super draggy part. Remind me of that.
Right.
But anyway, after the CFD, after the Hancha Group, I think probably the next CFD we saw was from 9 Laps Racing, who I think had Moreland Engineering doing it. There was a company called Emissive, and I think there's a new one that he's using now. But at the time, Moreland, and we didn't have much to go on, so that kind of got bounced around as sort of the official CFD. But CFD is really just like a first stab at something. Like when Formula One teams want to aero their car, they design shit in CFD, they test it multiple different ways, and then eventually they go, okay, we're going to go take this half-size model to the wind tunnel and try it. And then with that, they go back and refine the CFD, and they say, okay, this didn't behave exactly as expected in real world. Let's tweak these other values in the CFD. And then they go back and forth. So I kind of think of CFD and wind tunnel testing going hand in hand. It's not one versus the other. But we aren't at the stage where we've yet had anyone do the first rev, right? We have this CFD. Now we need to verify it with the wind tunnel. I don't know why I felt like that was my job. I'm like 11 hours away from North Carolina, and
Right.
racing is like, what, a couple, 3 hours? Like, they could absolutely go to the wind tunnel if they wanted to. But because I'm just kind of into this science forward, I did it. So, and that's kind of what I really want to talk about is how different is the CFD results from the wind tunnel, and what can we learn from that?
Right. So in the previous, not the previous, a previous podcast, because you've been on a couple times, you talked about the Rosetta Stone project, and this is not that project, right? Well, it's part of the project, but it's not complete.
Yeah, no, the Rosetta Stone is like sort of the end game. It's the last thing I wanted to do, which was you sort of have this real world testing, which is what I started with, which is really where people end with. And that was using strain gauges and potentiometers and stuff mounted to the car, and then seeing how it behaved on track and calculating things like drag and drag via coast down testing and downforce with the strain gauges and rolling resistance and other tests. And then you can get a real model of what was happening in the real world. But that's really difficult and expensive to do. And so you do cheap and easy things like CFD and wind tunnel. Mm-hmm. But eventually this Rosetta Stone, this idea was I could take all of the data that's out there, and whether it was CFD, that's like sort of one language, wind tunnel, that's another, and real world is another, and provide sort of the translation values in between them. And the wind tunnel being like A2, and we'll talk about why I use the A2 wind tunnel, but it's not the best, but we can't really get into the good stuff. And I think
we could.
Well,
but we didn't win the lottery, right?
Yeah, and that's like a level of racing that I'll just never get into. Like I rub shoulders with people in Miatas, like for a reason, right?
Right. And yeah. I drive clapped out Civics, like it's fine.
Yeah, I just want to say you're no better than I am.
I know.
Okay, just checking, because it's a fucking Honda. I mean, I'm a Honda guy, but okay, just checking. So this was an NA Miata, and that makes sense because the car in question, the CFD car, was an NA Miata. But it's close enough in generation to an NB Miata that a lot of the results, I would say, should follow the same. NC Miatas are a little different. I'd love to get one in the wind tunnel. ND further different, but certain parts of the car are the same. The general dimensions, the fact that the hard top, the canopy is like wider and shorter than it needs to be, all that kind of stuff, is similar. So I think that this applies generally to Miatas, but most definitely specifically to the NA Miata that I was trying to match in the wind tunnel, in the CFD, right, rather. So I was able to borrow this car from somebody who reads my blog, and they were like, I would love to help you out with the wind tunnel testing. And I was like, well, let me borrow your car because mine has gone too far over the edge. And he bought the whole 9 Lives Racing catalog, and he's a very meticulous person, and he set it up exactly. And then Johnny Zukowski got us some extra parts, like we wanted to try the canards and the spill boards and some other stuff. And so he was able to send that to us, and he came with us to the wind tunnel, which was pretty cool. Because he brought a special wing, which we'll talk about later. I
don't think you named him as the special wing person in your the draft white paper I wrote. Right?
I didn't. So. No, I didn't.
I'll bleep it out if you want.
No. I mean, I'll talk about that later when we get to the back of the car. Okay. But he honestly should be like jumping up and down and telling me, put that data in there. I sent him a draft of the wind tunnel report before I published it. And I said, Johnny, you should really let me publish the results of that wing because it outperformed all of the other wings. But I don't know, he wanted to do CFD on the wing instead. And I was like, I didn't understand it. In any case. So like another reason that I'm on this podcast is obviously to sell and to, I want to sell these wind tunnel reports. I want you to buy them, people to buy them, so that I can keep going to the wind tunnel because it's expensive. And this paltry $35 is the only way that I can make a little bit of money back.
Yeah. And okay, it's relatively inexpensive,
Yeah.
but it's still expensive, right? So, for do you want to get into A2 and the price?
Yeah.
As of
Like,
recording.
yeah, no, I mean, it's $10 a minute. It's $600 an hour. But every run takes a certain amount of time to spin the fans up and back down again. So if I was to open the wind tunnel door, shut it again, and then have them spin up the fans, that is about 7 minutes or so. So that's why, by the way, that my wind tunnel report is $35. It's half of one run. The fastest run you could possibly do is open the door and shut the door. But yeah, $600 an hour. So if you bring parts that are difficult to take on and off, like let's take it takes half an hour to do something, you wasted $300, and then you have no data to show for it. And so when I did splitters and diffusers in the first wind tunnel test, like I had to make sure that those things came on and off quickly. You're underneath the car, and when you jack up the car and put it back down on the pads, it doesn't come down the same every time. So you really want to minimize any time that you can lift the car up. You want to minimize your time, wasting time all the time. But even still, it's way cheaper than the alternatives. I think down the street is the Haas wind tunnel, and I think that's $35,000 a day. And then
there was another one right next door, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's right. But it takes NASCAR wheelbases, which are I think 109 inches, and the Miata is like 89. So there's no way you're going to get a Miata or anything that doesn't have a 109 inch wheelbase in the A1 tunnel. And that one is about 4 times more expensive also per hour, and you have to fabricate anchors for your cars so that they can go on the rollers, and it's also a different. It's more involved. It's more expensive, but I mean, I heard Ido Waxman tell me there was another wind tunnel, and I called them. I think it's only like 4 or 5 hours away from me, and it was like $12,000 and has a rolling road. So that's maybe a possibility. Maybe I'll get Ido to go with me, and we'll do like a rolling. Like what I'd like to do is do all of the same tests I did at A2 in a rolling facility, and then we can have the correction factor. Right, that's sort of the Rosetta Stone aspect here.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's still so in the grand scheme of things, a couple hours at A2 is not expensive.
Right.
In relative terms.
Yeah.
$1,200, but $12,000 becomes a big deal. So everybody who's wondering why people charge for the data that comes out, that's why. So
yeah, and there's of course the wind tunnel time is, I don't know, a third of it. You still have to fabricate parts, make things that come on and off quickly, practice how to do it, drive 11 hours, pay for gas and hotel, and drive 11 hours home. And in my case, then I have to like write up a nerdy white paper on it, and that all takes like a heck of a lot of time.
Yep.
Like you read the draft of the wind tunnel report, and I try and be clever and write things in a nice way. A readable way, but all the data and going through all the data and putting it into tables and making and running the simulations, all that stuff takes many, many hours. I kind of wonder if people really want that or not, but I'm trying to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
I purchased this C5 wind tunnel report from like 2001, which is also $35. And it just is like, I don't know, 6 pages. It's got a whole bunch of data and very small, brief explanations. And as shitty as I think my pictures are, I mean, theirs are terrible. But it's great data, and it's worth $35.
Yeah, and you have 53 pages, I think, was the last one I read.
Yeah, and it's getting longer. So I released version like 1.01, and then shortly after, emailed everyone and said, here's the new link for 1.03, because it was missing a very significant part on the entire car, the lift drag ratio of the entire car, aerodynamic balance. And now there's a new version coming out because I'm like, oh, I got all these other things I wanted to talk about. So yeah, in a couple weeks. And I'm sure that there will be errors. I'm just hoping someone will find something and say something to me.
Okay, so I'd be amiss if I send you $35 right now and I get the report. If you make an update, will I get the update?
It's already out there. Yeah, the first update's already out there. Yeah.
No, but will I get the second update?
The second update's a few weeks away. I don't even, it's just thoughts in my mind, and I'm waiting for people to send me corrections before I would do it. That'll be the third update. Well, no, the third version is the second update. So right now is version 1.03. If you have that version, you have the latest. And I'm not sending out anything new anytime soon.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if you do send an update, will somebody who paid for version 1.1 get the updates?
Yeah. I send an email to everybody and say, hey, here's the latest. Download. Yeah,
okay.
Of course. Yeah.
All right. I just want to make sure.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's. I think I even say that in there somewhere. There will be updates, and you will get the latest copy. It's okay. Yeah, for sure. But good question. So I think that covers sort of the preamble of why we're doing this. Verify CFD. But part of this, I want to focus on what I would call a quote-unquote normal Miata, right? People are building V8 Miatas, tube frame, Hayabusa, turbo, whatever. And I call those like Miata-shaped objects. Sure, they have quarter panels and roofs or other things that look like Miatas, but they're just so far beyond the reach of 99.999% of Miatas that it's a different category. We shouldn't be talking about them in the same way. Miatas are the slow cars you talked about at the beginning, right? They're all over the place. There's 1.2 million of them. And they're at every track day and autocross and this and that. Those are the ones I'm talking about. So as it relates to the wind tunnel report, and I'm not going to talk about anything that has more than 250 horsepower, because at that point, we can really overcome drag a lot easier. And we're not going to talk about anything that weighs like less than 2,000 pounds, because then aerodynamics works better with a lighter car. And that's just not realistic. I hope that makes sense.
Makes sense to me.
Cool. The other thing I want to do is talk about just around a baseline speed of 100 miles an hour. That's a round number. It's also the default value for the wind tunnel that it spits out stuff at. And I think it's just a good compromise between cornering speed and top speed.
It's attainable, right?
Yeah.
For the Miata, I mean, even my Civic, I think I have a like summit point average speed is 80-ish miles an hour. And then my top speed I ever run is gear dependent, but it's 131. So it's, it's even in the zone for what my Civic will do. So
yeah, cool, good. So sort of average-ish miles per hour is what we're saying.
Right.
Because you see a lot of like people, I have a whole list of like different miles per hour that people list things at. Like I looked at the Corvette Aero, and they report at 186 miles an hour. I don't know why. Porsche was at 177 miles an hour. So-and-so, Nine Lives Racing, for example, 150 miles an hour. And I just want to get away from anything at that speed, because I don't think it's realistic, especially for Miatas. It just sort of inflates the numbers too much.
Yeah. I don't know many cars at a NASA weekend hitting over 150. So
yeah, let's keep this to normal cars. Yeah, but normal Miatas for sure. So before we go, like this is like a sort of a thing that I kind of remember. I keep in my head, because when I think of things in terms of 100 miles an hour, I always say something like, oh yeah, my splitter made 190 pounds of downforce at 100 miles an hour. Or I'll say, oh, this spoiler made 101 pounds of downforce at 100 miles an hour. And people will be like, well, how much is that at 50 miles an hour? Or how much is that at X miles an hour? So just for the listeners, here's an easy way to think of that. If you have all these figures in your head at 100 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour is about 10% of that. So 10 pounds of downforce, nothing, right? 50 miles an hour is about 25%. 70 miles an hour, actually 70.7 miles an hour, is 50%. And I think of that as sort of an average corner speed, at least on the tracks I go to. 70 seems ish. And then, so if you think about, oh, this part has so and so much downforce, you're like, well, I really only have half that much at 70 miles an hour.
Right.
It's a good thought. Go ahead.
So it's a ramping curve.
Yeah, it goes up quite a bit. I was saying it was a square, it goes up by the square, but then someone corrected me and said it was by the quadratic or something. And I was like, dude, I'm not a mathematician. I'm barely in it, whatever. So here's another one. 122 miles an hour is great. That's 150% of the downforce. And then I think 142 miles an hour is 200% of the downforce at 100. So those are kind of easy ways for me to think of it. Like, I'm like, okay, corners, 70, 50%. Straight line speed, 150%. And I've never gone 144 miles an hour in a Miata. Whether you had a 5-speed or a 6-speed, you'd be topped out, like you've run out of gear at that speed. But it's absolutely not reasonable to go above that speed because the Miata transmissions and final drives aren't doing that unless you swap them. So going to 150 miles an hour, I think is just stupid.
Well, I mean, not to disparage people, but there's no industry standard, right? And when pretty round numbers come out at obtuse speeds, you still go with the pretty round numbers, right? And it's just weird. I wish there was a standard number, and I'm assuming as far as I remember from reading the draft, you use 100 miles an hour, period, in the wind tunnel, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a little value in the spreadsheet. You can change it to whatever you want, and all the values change.
Okay.
I mean, so have you ever seen this site called Mulsanne's Database?
No.
It's a whole bunch of Le Mans cars, basically, and shows you the lift drag ratios and downforce. And all of that is based on 150 miles an hour. So, yeah, I mean, if you're racing Le Mans, okay. And if you're developing an LMP car, okay. I think 150 miles an hour is a great standard, right? If you're racing Miatas and you're 150 miles an hour, I don't think so. Like, that's just fantasy land. I'm fine with 100. So that's what I standardized on. And I just sort of turned my nose up at anything like that's a lot longer, like a lot higher than that. But people can do what they want.
Well, I just think it's important when you read company X says this product produces, 150 pounds of downforce at 150 miles an hour. And then company B says this one produces 200 pounds of downforce at, 160 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Like the variables there's still variables in there, and how close are they? And there's things going on. So you need to try to standardize your stuff when you're evaluating product.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think that AJ always talks about in terms of 100 miles an hour. So do I. Maybe we can just make that a movement. But if you see some 150 mile an hour figures, just divide by 2.25.
Okay.
So if somebody says, oh, it makes 225 pounds of downforce at 150, well, it's actually 100 pounds at 100. I was watching a video that said something about 150 miles, like 70 pounds of downforce at 150. And the first thing I did was divide by 2.25. And I was like, oh, shit, that's nothing. My canards do that.
Yeah. I think that needs to get out there because people, they're trying to sell stuff. So numbers sell stuff. So you have to worry about those types of discrepancies, especially between manufacturers. So,
yeah, you'd hope that they would standardize. In lieu of that, let's just talk about 100 miles an hour. I think that's, if you have to just choose one number, I would just choose a number that's in between a straight and a corner. Like, ideally, we'd talk about downforce in 3 different ways. Like, we would talk about top speed, so that we can talk about how much stress the components take. We would talk about, a low speed corner and maybe a high speed corner. And then we could say, oh, but that's too much work, and let's just average it and just use 100. Let's move on.
Right. Sure. Let's go.
Okay. So let's talk about like how CFD differed. I mean, we could talk about the wind tunnel a little bit, but I want to get to the meat of this, which is what's the difference between CFD and wind tunnel? How do you want to go about that?
I mean, let's talk about what you think is good for CFD. We'll go CFD good, bad, and stuff. Yeah.
CFD good would be anything I can't test in the A2 wind tunnel, which is things like underbody and spinning tires, and canards, which I'd love to talk about in a second. But also the CFD returned really pretty accurate drag values compared to what we found in the wind tunnel. So I think the CFD of the base, like they had a Miata that was lowered 2 inches and it made 370 pounds of drag at 150 miles an hour, which we are going to translate to about 165 pounds of drag at 100 miles an hour. And our base Miata had 179 pounds of drag. But we had the air damage splitter, but those don't generally change the drag much. So the overall drag of the entire car was pretty similar in the wind tunnel and CFD. So maybe it's pretty good at that.
Okay.
And the CFD was really good. I want to talk about that part later about like specific parts, but it was pretty good at things like canards. Where it wasn't, where it returned some different results, was certainly in front downforce, probably downforce in general, because our car we set it up exactly as in CFD. And in the CFD, it showed more front downforce than rear and about 280 pounds of downforce total at 100 miles an hour. In our car, we got about 100 pounds less downforce, and there was 0 on the front and 180 on the rear. So a completely different aerodynamic balance. Instead of 60-40 on the front, it was 0-100.
Oh, wow. Okay. And
yeah,
but what do you think in the CFD? I know you're not a CFD person, but what do you think could have been causing that?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a CFD person, but certainly the way the air moves through the engine compartment, the way, like if we put a wing that makes, let's say, 300 pounds in the back of a car, we typically lose 20 to 25% downforce on the front of the car because it's pushing the back wheels down and just levers the front wheels up, right? Likewise, when we put a splitter on the front, we often lose that 20%-ish on the back. You push the front down, put a bunch of sandbags on the front of the car, and the back comes up a little bit. So this is happening. We see that for sure in the wind tunnel. I don't know, maybe in the CFD it doesn't happen in the same way because we get a huge loss. We lost 72 pounds of front downforce by putting the rear wing on. And this was a car that without the rear wing had 120 pounds of lift on the rear end. It had front downforce and a ton of rear lift, 120 pounds of downforce, but when you put the wing on it, it just reversed everything. And so that would be like a very strange, if you had a car that was sort of balanced 0 front, 100% rear, would be different to drive than a car that was 60-40 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that a lot of people have been looking at that Moreland CFD and saying, I need more rear downforce. Like this car is 60-40 to the front. And in reality, it's not, at least not in the wind tunnel, right? I mean, the wind tunnel has its own vagaries as well, being a smaller wind tunnel with not a rolling floor and kind of growing boundary layer. It has its challenges, but we've tested lots of cars and AJ's tested lots of cars and he kind of knows the correction value here. And it's nothing like the difference that we're seeing here is not easily explainable. And I would say the CFD needs to go back and get fixed because we're missing 100 pounds of downforce and it's totally lopsided aero-wise.
I'm trying to figure out where to go in all these notes we have here.
Well, let me tell you where we should go. First of all, let's open the windows.
Good.
Yeah. So the CFD was done, I'm assuming, with closed windows. Like some things that CFD can do well and some things they can't do well. And some of the things are like how air moves through the engine compartment is probably not easy to model. There's so many things that cause little flow separations, or how air moves through that engine compartment and then down through the car is difficult. Likewise, when you open the windows, it's hard to model how air is going in the cabin and coming back out again and the turbulence. So I think they just typically like roll the windows up for CFD, right? So we tested in the wind tunnel initially with the windows closed, and then we removed the windows to see what the difference was, and that immediately shifted the weight balance forward. What happened was that the front gained 10 pounds of downforce, and the rear lost 14 pounds of downforce just by opening the windows.
Okay.
And another thing we could do is start adding more front downforce. So a lot of the things that we tried in the wind tunnel, such as hood vents, fender vents, spillboards, tire wickers, or spats, whatever you want to call them, all of those things added front downforce. Canards also, especially, splitter diffusers. You can add all of that stuff to the front. And when we did that, we added like the whole catalog of parts to the front with the rear wing. We actually ended up with a really favorably balanced car, which is like 41% front, 59% rear, which is exactly how I like it. And I would drive that car all day. So the point is, maybe the CFD was a little optimistic about the amount of downforce and the front rear balance. But if you add the entire catalog of parts that you could add to a Miata, you actually get pretty close to where that was. And all those things are smart things to do anyway.
Oh, and my noobness, when we were talking about the wing and the balance and the testing, that was all set to 0, right? 0 degrees on the wing?
No, at that point, actually, we put the wing at 5 degrees because the CFD actually has the wing at 2 degrees or at 5 degrees. So we just put it at 5 degrees too. Yeah.
Okay.
But we had to set the car up exactly the same as the CFD. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. As long as it's the same as the CFD, that's fine. But I didn't remember where it was set. So
yeah. So I think that's all like kind of good news, right? Like, and also we can take this data and hopefully feed it back into whoever does the next version of Miata CFD and come up with a much more realistic numbers, because I list all of that data at the back of the wind tunnel report. You're going to see the drag and lift of every single component and how we tested it. So that should be useful.
yeah, and I think that's important that the CFD users want the most informed CFD model, because I'm going to assume it's cheaper. It's not cheap, but cheaper than wind tunnel time, right? It's one of the reasons it's done. So,
I don't know how cheap it is to do, honestly, because I think I saw it on the Nine Lives website. It said CFD wind tunnel testing, $2,500. I don't know what that means, CFD wind tunnel. Like, if you were going to do the CFD, why wouldn't you just do it on a road? Why would you put it in a wind tunnel? But CFD for $2,500 compares about the same as doing a wind tunnel test. 4 hours of
Johnny's not here, but is that a package that he sells?
Yeah, it was on the website. I saw it on the website. It said that. Yeah.
I think it's going to cover like scanning and all that of the car.
Maybe. I don't know. But anyway, similar to doing 4 hours. I mean, one of the cool things about wind tunnel testing is, like, if you want to just change the wing angle, like, let's say you do it at 0 degrees and you run in, you change, pull 2 bolts out, put them back in, run back out. That test costs you $75 or $80 to run that test, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it happens in 7 minutes, right? It's all done and you get the data. I think if you wanted to do that in CFD, if it's a high fidelity model, like, it takes many hours. Like, I was talking to Kyle Forster about the CFD he's running, and he would be like, yeah, it has to run like all day. Like, you don't get your results till the next day.
Oh,
and
wow.
then you're like, oh, well, I got to change the wing angle again. And then, your computers are, doing this mad, like tons of heat, tons of computations, et cetera, et cetera. So some things are really easy to do in the wind tunnel, right? Change the wing angle, run out, do it again. Also things like how much do hood vents work? That's great because we just put tape over the hood vents and then we just rip it off and try it again. Whereas in CFD, I think that'd be very difficult to model how those work, how hood vents
Right.
would, because you'd have to model the entire engine compartment and all sorts of other stuff. And it's like, yeah. So they just go hand in hand. And like for me, because I use the A2 wind tunnel and because it's cheap and easy, I can never get what happens around the wheels, right? They're not spinning. There's all sorts of stuff that happens there. And I pretty much ignore anything on the bottom of the car from behind the front wheels. I'm never going to test another diffuser there, for example. It's just a waste of time.
Okay.
Well, I don't think it's a waste of time, but you're not going to get correct values until I come up with a way to, like a correction factor for the underbody.
Mm-hmm.
I won't trust the numbers. Maybe I'll gather the data and sit on it. And then later when I be doing some other kind of testing, I'll be like, oh, so that's what that means. But it's just not a great use of time. Go after the front of the car, the top of the car, change your end plates on your wing, change your gurney flap. I think you can get pretty reliable data from that.
Do we want to get into how the wind tunnel can correct CFD? Or have we covered that enough?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a CFD person. I just know that here's the data. You guys fix it. You got close. That's what I want to tell them, right? You got close. Your CFD was close, but you're obviously lacking the front downforce. Something happened, either levering the car up or you calculated how much front downforce there was, but there was just zero. Like the wing pulled back on the splitter so much and we got zero. But, after we added the hood vents, the fender vents, the canards, blah, 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 we got back to a really good spot.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me tell you about some of the other things we tested because those were really fun. And this is kind of goes into the what is CFD good at, and that's canards. So, and these are always kind of mysterious. You don't know how well they're going to work. But the 9 Lives Racing canards are pretty large, chunky items. They have a very large raised, I don't know if you want to call it a wicker on the outer edge. It's kind of a vertical. I think it's about 2 inches high, which seems pretty large. And then it comes with a paper template. And if you're mounting, one canard, it tells you where to put it. And if you're going to mount 2 canards, it tells you where to put those. And in my experience, the lower canard does all the work, right? So like on my Veloster, the top canard, if I put one in the top position, it made 14 pounds of downforce. If I put one in the middle position, it made 11 pounds of downforce. And when I put one at the bottom position, it made 85 pounds of downforce.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So when we put the canards on the Miata, the 9 Lives template says if you're going to use one canard, you put it in the middle position. And for me, that made 11 pounds of downforce. And if you use 2 canards, you put it at the top and the bottom. And I looked at Johnny and said, this is going to be totally wrong. Like the bottom canard does all the work. And he was like, well, I'll bet you. And I was like, we were making gentlemen's bets all day. It was fun.
Right.
And I was like, no. I said, yeah, no, the bottom canard makes all the downforce. So we ran the numbers, we ran each test. And I was like, yay, I won. The bottom canard made more downforce. But once I had got home and looked at the actual data, if you put a single canard in the bottom, it has like a lift drag ratio of maybe, 3 to 1. And if you have the lift drag, if you put the canard in the CFD optimized position, which was higher than that, kind of higher than the middle, it was 7.5 to 1. So yeah, the bottom canard does make more downforce, but it also makes a shit ton more drag. And then where they placed that canard was a really good spot in the middle. I think that's one of the things that CFD got right. Let me continue with that story because on my Veloster, I also got a CFD designed canard from Veris Engineering or Veris, whatever they're called. And I was skeptical of it too, because I was like, look at this shitty canard. They want me to put it in this spot. And I tested that in the wind tunnel and it didn't, it only made 15 pounds of downforce compared to the 85 pounds of downforce mine was making, but it made 0 drag. like zero, and had zero effect on the rear wing. And I was like, wow, that was free downforce, free for nothing. I mean, I'd still like the 85 pounds of downforce, but the 15 pounds of downforce for nothing. And I was like, wow. So CFD is really good at certain things. And that was a lesson for me to like check my assumptions, I'm always making assumptions based on very little data because I just don't have that much data. But that was a really cool lesson to learn, right? But to get back to the 9 Lives canards for a second. So what was really interesting is that running the 2 canards, the lower canard I said makes the most downforce. But if you add the upper canard to it, wouldn't you think that like your downforce would go up and your drag would go up? But it doesn't actually happen. The upper canard reduces the drag of the entire system. So two canards has less drag than 1 canard. I mean, we're talking the bottom canard and the top canard. And that was really like, wow. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen with canards. So, and they added something like 35 pounds of downforce at 100 miles an hour, 40 pounds of downforce, whatever that is. Or 110 at 150 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's wild to me.
That's a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've seen some canard data from other cards too. Hush data that I can't tell you about, but in some cases, 2 canards work better than 1. In some cases, 1 works better. And then it's usually the bottom canard that does all the work. And that's why I made that assumption. But so it was kind of cool to see sometimes that's different.
Yeah. I think it just goes to show that the wind tunnel stuff is very model and car specific, right? So
yeah, it's a good way to put it.
There are universal assumptions you can make, but numbers wise, and there's definitely things that still come out of left field that you're like, wow, okay, that's wild.
Well, I wouldn't make any assumptions on canards, honestly. I mean, I would make certain assumptions about the wing or some other things that I understand, but my understanding of canards is that they're always different. Like
voodoo.
It is voodoo because, I mean, what's the standard? What angle of attack should we be using? I don't know. Like, I mean, right. I've seen some at 60 degrees angle attack and some at like 15 degrees. I mean, these are not wings. They don't have an airfoil shape. They're just a blade. And so the air doesn't stay attached on the underside. They just sort of spin a vortex off the side. So I don't know what they're doing. And I don't know why sometimes, like, I would like to take that 9 Lives canard and cut the vertical, gate on the side of that thing off of there, that fence. One day I was talking to Kyle Forster and I was going to write an article and asked him to like spit out some stuff. I said, what's the most common mistake you see on track cars? And he just blurted out immediately, boxed in canards. And I started laughing and he was like, no, actually it's splitters without diffusers. But it got me thinking about canards that have a very big end plate or a very big edge on it. I mean, if it has that, then the air is really channeling on the canard, but it's not really spilling off in the same way, which is, I think, as the air is sort of expanding span-wise across the front bumper, right, from the middle towards the outsides, and it sort of runs into the canard, and then it spins up high pressure to low pressure, and then sucks the air out from the wheel wells and sucks the air out from below the edge of the splitter and kind of creates more downforce. And I think that's why, for example, my Veloster was able to make 85 pounds of downforce with these 2 little shitty pieces of aluminum that I made. They didn't have an upturned edge or anything, right? But they really took care of that spanwise expansion. They kind of shot the air out to the sides of the car and sucked all the air out, which made the splitter work way better. And I think that here I'm just going on conjecture. I have no idea that maybe if you trimmed that edge, it might work a little bit better. But that's something I'd like to try in the future.
I wonder if it's just there for simple rigidity, but maybe not.
No,
I don't know.
That's a good point. I mean, like I said, they designed these things well in CFD, so I should probably just shut up and be like, yeah, that's the right canard.
Right.
Let me tell you another thing that worked great in the wind tunnel, which was the Blackbird Fabworks spoiler. Do you know
Okay.
what that is? Do you know what that is? You ever
I've seen the pictures.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen them in real life, and I always thought they kind of looked like somebody's, you know, in shop project or something. You know, it's
Right.
just like a couple of pieces of plexiglass and some brackets, and you're like, God, it looks kind of cool, but it also kind of looks kind of dorky.
Right.
I think I'd like to make something different. In any case, the angle changes from about 30 degrees to 70 degrees, and therefore the height changes from about, say, 5 inches tall to about 10 inches tall. So we swept just three heights, 5 inches, 8 inches, and 10 inches, just to see what the difference in downforce was, and drag and whatnot. Well, I'll tell you, in the low position at 5 inches tall, it made 100 pounds of downforce ish, and had an 11.5 to 1 lift drag ratio. To put that into like terms, like compared to a wing, that's better than all the wings, right? Like, I know that the 9 Lives wing is supposed to do 15 to 1 lift drag ratio, and somehow on your car did 24 to 25 to 1. Voodoo. And on my hatchback, same wing, same exact wing you've got, 55-inch wing, set at 0 degrees at roof height. Mine did 3.6 to 1 lift drag ratio. You got 25 to 1. And on the back of a Miata, it's like 10.5. So it was wild to see that the spoiler in lift drag terms, like, it didn't make as much downforce, but it also didn't lose any front downforce. Like, it actually added like 3 or 4 pounds of front downforce and 99 pounds of rear downforce or something like that. And it did so very efficiently. Like, it only lost, I think it was 2.3 horsepower due to drag, which is goddamn nothing, right? Like,
yeah.
And so I'm thinking, like, we need more spoilers. I think they look cool. I think that one doesn't look great, but I'd love to see like a fixed 5 or 6 inch spoiler being sold. Maybe 9 Lives can make one, because honestly, they work fantastic. They don't change the balance of the car much. And the Miata we tested with the air dam and a splitter, it had 120 something pounds of rear lift, and the spoiler almost canceled it, the 5-inch spoiler. Now, if you raise the spoiler to 8 inches, things get, like, downforce goes up, but drag goes up a lot. Right. To 10 inches. Once you go to 10 inches, you're like, whoa, there's a ton of drag. And what was a 10.5 to 1 lift drag ratio becomes like 3 to 1. So there is Tim Miller sort of calculated the optimal height for a spoiler with different powered engines. And I will sort of leave this nugget out there, which is that if you have a stock Miata or with bolt-ons, let's just say a maximum of, let's say, 130 horsepower, you're probably best using a spoiler of around 6 to 7 inches. Probably smaller on the track side, like a 6-inch spoiler, and if you're doing autocross, maybe on the 7-inch side. And if you have a very powerful Miata, 200 and whatever horsepower K-swap, you'd want to be to the 7-8 inch range. Really, you should be into a wing at that point. But if you are racing some class that doesn't allow a wing, somewhere in the 7 to 8 inch. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, somewhere in the 6, 7, 8 inch range is really good for a variety of Miatas. Even though the 5 sounds like it was really good because of that 10.5 lift drag ratio. When you throw all these builds into optimum lap and do the calculations, you do kind of need a little bit more downforce, and somewhere around 7 is better.
Okay. James Houghton has a spoiler on his TSX, so he's sort of made them more famous, and then made them even more famous when he had one of his nerdy friends decided to cut slits in it to see if he could get more overall surface area, workable surface area. So.
Yeah, it's clever. It's a clever idea. I probably would have played with the shape too. You could probably do a sawtooth top edge or other things that would have helped. And also, it's pretty stagnant down by the trunk. So even leaving a gap at the bottom might have done something. But you can make I was trying to sort of calculate how big of a spoiler that would be on a Miata, because, Grid Life has this sort of 250 square inch rule, right? And I think that if you took like a 7-inch piece of plywood and then rounded the corners like with a bucket, and then just made it flat across the top, I think that's 250 square inches, with 40 inches wide like the Miata trunk. So that's another way to do it, and round the corners and make it tall, and there you have your spoiler. It would look a little bit like I think it looks pretty good, actually.
Well, so I see, I'm going to go on a tangent here, because I see the muscle cars, the new muscle car era, and they have it's lower in the middle. The spoilers, the factory spoilers are lower in the middle. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me, but maybe they are doing something. I don't know. It just, yeah.
I think that's for visibility, like seeing out the window. But it could also be just for marketing reasons. They don't make Aero so that it works, right? They make it so it sells.
Yeah, it looks good. Maybe there's some compliance issue with they got to be able to see out of the rearview mirror a certain amount, which that shouldn't make sense, because they have box fans and stuff that don't need that. But I don't know. Well,
I'll mention one more thing that worked really well, because Johnny's not here.
Okay.
But that was his 3D wing that he welded up. I made one out of foam, and it worked really well. He just basically cut and rewelded one of his wings so that the ends kind of came down like 6 or 7 degrees, I would say. And that's because if you put a 2D wing across the back of a Miata, the center portion of the wing experiences 6 or 7 degrees more angle of attack than the ends of the wings, just because of the shape of the roof line and the air coming down the roof. So if you twist those ends downward, whatever is sort of outside of the wing supports, then you actually get the same angle of attack across the entire wing. So every 2D wing is experiencing a different angle of attack across the whole wing, especially a wider wing. Like your 55-inch wing is probably a little more consistent, but on a 64-inch wing, there's a larger change in angle. So the 3D wing, I think it was a 13.5 lift drag ratio. It was really quite good. It was better than spoiler. It was better than any of the other wings by a good margin. And it makes sense that it would be, right? So that's kind of like if you were in a class like GLTC where they have a limit on the wing size, or you were like, oh, I want to do a 500 square inch wing, you're going to get, I forgot, I calculated it once. It was something like 8 or 12% more performance being able to twist the wings down like that.
That's assuming you need that kind of performance. You rear wheel drive guys and all, but.
Well, even you would, if you could gain a half a horsepower, what that also would allow you to do is run less wing angle, not just more downforce, right? So, because now that the air is experiencing the same angle attack across the wing, you could drop wing angle.
Yeah.
But your wing only uses 1 horsepower. I mean, I still go back and look at that spreadsheet every once in a while, and I'm like, how did he do that? How does that wing create 100? I think your wing was make 165 or 180 pounds of downforce or something, and at a loss of only 1 horsepower. It's amazing.
Yeah, but I mean, it was negating basically the lift, because when we removed it, the back end was picking up. So
yeah, that's what it's doing. It's negating the lift. Yeah, it's not like you're making a shit ton of downforce more than that, but you're negating all that lift. Yeah.
Right. So.
Well, so now speaking of your car, let's go back to your car for a second. So we were talking about, is it draggy or not? It had a drag coefficient of, I think, 0.416.
Okay.
That's the same as my Veloster.
Oh, that's
like the
wild.
base car, isn't it?
Okay.
And there was a couple other cars that I was looking at, and they're all in the same, I think it was a C8. It's also 0.41, 0.416. And I was like, isn't that crazy? Yeah. And now the Miata was like 0.38. So that's kind of surprising. I always thought that Miatas were sort of draggy, shitty objects, but they're not that bad.
I mean, they're small, right? So if you look at in the Honda world, I drive a boat, right?
Is it?
Yeah, it's pretty. She's a big girl for a Honda. A C8 is not, while low profile, it's still very wide, you know. And then your Veloster sort of just, it's not as wide but taller than my car probably. So
I kind of think my car is just as wide as yours. But anyway, to get back to this, we're not talking about the area of the car. We're just talking about the coefficient of drag, which is independent of area. I'm not doing a CDA for this. We're just talking CD. And this is another area where I think that Johnny needs to correct his CFD stuff. Because in the CFD, it shows a coefficient of drag of like 0.65 for the Miata, which makes absolutely no sense, because if you look at the drag value at 150 miles an hour, I mean, you can only get that drag value if it has a CD of less than 0.4. So there's something going on erroneously with the math. Like they either calculated the car as if it was only like 10 square feet, or there's something else really just strange going on with the published CFD. But on the Nine Lives webpage, they talk about how draggy the Miata is. But if you look at all of the other CFD they've done, like the C5, like the 350Z, like pretty much any other car that they sort of short of the CFD, the drag of, the Miata is less than all of them. So
right.
I wouldn't call the Miata draggy. Not only is it not very draggy, but it's also like 18 square feet of area. So it's quite a small car. And these aren't many cars that are making 170 pounds of drag at 100 miles an hour. It's just pretty decent.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how it could be unless like the ride height got jacked, or I don't know. It has to be a math thing.
Well, they show two different ride heights. So when we tested it only as a CFD lowered height, I mean, we set the ride height exactly as it was done in the CFD. So we're not screwing around with that. Yeah, I don't know. If there's something to the math. No, because the pounds of drag is correct. It's the coefficient of drag that's wrong. The thing is, the one should inform the other. Like, how could they be so far off? I don't understand it.
Yeah,
but anyway,
that's where the math has to be off.
Yeah, I'm going to leave that in his ballpark.
Right, that's fair.
Yeah.
So, well, what else do we need to cover from the report? Because the report covers like front, back. Well, you go actually progress from the front to the back, essentially, right?
Right.
So you're covering all sorts of things. Actually, there is a question that I had that I really, there are a couple of items in there that you mentioned, things that are mentioned in the report that are unconventional aerodynamic parts, or unconventional parts that have aerodynamic help. I don't know how to word that, but what?
Yeah, tricks. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I just, what kind of things should people be looking at?
Well, to answer that, I'll tell you some of the things that we tested that are in that wind tunnel report that we haven't talked about yet, which are splitter diffusers, which is, of course, the 9 Live splitter diffusers. Also, there's spill boards that they sell. And we tried tire spats, but these are sort of just a DIY kind of thing, that like a tire deflector.
Right.
We tried kind of the standard 3-inch brake duct that winds up on a lot of Miatas in the front, singular hood vents, and singular fender vents. Race Levers has got a ton of data on their vents, but we chose to use the singular ones because that's what Phil, the guy with the Miata, he bought. We also tried removing the lower fender. A lot of people do what they call I don't know what they call these things, track life or something. They kind of cut off the bottom of the fender behind the wheel. So we tried that to see what that would do. We similarly removed. A lot of people do a bumper cut on the bumper to kind of relieve, because people say, oh, the rear bumper is a parachute. So we tried removing that. We have a lot of people run NACA ducts in the quarter windows. They'll put holes in the rear window, either like at the roof line, or they'll put them at the base of the windshield. And we tried in both places. One of the funniest things that you see in sort of Miata dome is this like rear spoiler thing. It's like a roof line spoiler. It's just, have you seen those things? It's kind of a roof extension.
Yeah. They make them for my car too, because it's a coupe.
Oh, okay. I think they look kind of cool. Like, I'm not much of a dork, but we tried that. We tried a fastback from CCP, which was pretty cool. I also tested my fastback, but I didn't release those numbers. So you can guess at that. And then we tried, of course, the 9 Lives wing, a Wing Logic wing, the 3D wing that I told you about, and then a couple of my DIY wings. And that's all in that report. I think what you were mentioning, you were thinking about were some of the stuff I used to deflect air around the open windows.
Yeah.
So, and that was also a on-off mirror test. And all of that stuff was really interesting. Like, I've asked Kyle Forster about this stuff before. I said, what can we do to, like, because in other countries they race around with the windows closed, right? And we don't. We have to have the windows open. So that on some cars it can be pretty significant. Like on my Veloster, I actually thought my Veloster was going to be pretty good, but it ends up being worse than some other cars. It was a 7% increase in drag and a 15% loss in rear downforce opening the windows on the Veloster. I think on the Miata, it was a 3% drag and a 7% loss in downforce ish. And on your car, it was like, it didn't care so much about the window net and some other things that we tried. But every car is going to be just different with the open windows. So I wanted to try kicking the air around the window using like a wicker on the frame, essentially on the A pillar. And then I tried another one at the roof line, kind of like a drip edge or like a rain rail, you would say. And both of those things actually did kick the wind out and provide downforce or drag of some small amount. That's all in the report. And the mirrors was like super surprising. They were only a loss of something like 0.3 horsepower. Don't quote me. I'm not looking at it right now. But the mirrors, like if you have open windows, probably leave the mirrors on. Whatever you're going to gain from it is not as much as you think. And oddly, I think they also provide a little bit of downforce, or maybe just counteract some loss of lift or something. But for sure, you can just leave the mirrors on a Miata. It's better. Those were some of the nuggets that came out of there were really interesting. Also cutting the holes in the window. I gotta just talk about this one because I see it all the time, right? People will have a hard top with a Lexan rear window, and then they'll put holes in the bottom of the window, like where the window meets the trunk. Have you seen that? I mean, I was just watching a Champ Car race, and there was an E30 that had holes at the bottom of the window, and I'm like, man, you don't want to do that. That's like a high pressure area. The air is coming down the roof. It intersects with the trunk, and that creates high pressure. So air goes in the car, right? And what you're trying to do is vent the cabin. So if you put put them at the bottom, you lose downforce and you gain drag. If you put the vents at the top of the window, you gain downforce and you lose drag. So, people stop putting the vents at the base of the window. Or, in Miatas, like, I think people would think that they should put a gap at the bottom of they should like pick their hard top up a little bit at the bottom and leave like a half-inch gap to vent the air out of the cabin, but that just pushed the air in the cabin.
Yeah, I remember the hard top coming up a little bit in the wind tunnel, so...
Oh, that was crazy. Yeah, we had a couple of runs we had to redo because parts were lifting off the pavement. Yeah.
You want to swap them quick, but you want them to be secure.
Yeah, that's right. So, like the wind tunnel concludes with a whole bunch of my usual, which is running race simulations. I like to take all of the parts and build different cars and then simulate them in optimum lap.
Mhm.
And that gives you an idea of, I do this on an autocross course, so for low speed, and then I do it on a lime rock for higher speed and give you an idea of like, what's that wing worth? What's the ST5 build worth? And I do, speaking of ST5, I run the whole setup from, do you want to run BTM Aero? Do you want to use just a wing, or do you want to use the wing with an air dam, or do you want to, et cetera? And do you want to run the wing flat or at 5 degrees? And I simulate all of those different lap times at Lime Rock. And so that's one of the cool things that you can do with this wind tunnel report is I give you the base model Miata, which is like an air dam and a splitter and nothing else in the car. And then every single piece of that you can add to it. And so you'd be like, okay, the rear wing does this. Just add the numbers together. And the fender vents did this. Add the numbers together. And you get kind of a rough approximation of what is the coefficient of drag of my car, what's the coefficient of lift, what would be my front rear aero balance based on putting all these parts together. And if you have Optimum Lap, which is a free program and everyone should have it, then you can just plug those numbers in and see how much faster your car goes.
Yeah, you've even done some Optimum Lap stuff for me, and I can't wait to get the car dynoed and get some more data out of that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super stoked to do that too. Like, the thing is, sometimes Optimum Lap shows much smaller gains than you want, right? For example, if I were to reduce my car by 100 pounds and I run it in Optimum Lap, I'm like, give me that second. And you're like, it's only 0.3 seconds? Why is that? And I don't know. I mean, there's just, it's a computer program. It's a free one at that. I think the alternatives, like Optimum G has some other program that they sell, and I think it's like $4,000 a year or something. That one does more sophisticated stuff, but you're paying yearly for it. And then there's Canopy Solutions, which to charge 46,000 British pounds per year for very, very accurate simulations.
We will make the free thing work and identify areas of improvement.
If you want to do a podcast, and maybe a podcast isn't the right way to do it, maybe we should do a video, but there is a way to really get Optimum Lap to spit out super accurate lap times. The corner speeds will be off, but you can actually get it to predict lap times like within like 0.5%. But it requires you to do things like, first of all, you have to find all of the Spec Miata records. You have to build a Spec Miata in Optimum Lap and then run it around, and then you can get a grip value. And then you can change the grip value. But in some cases, if you have an uphill or a downhill, you may need to shorten or lengthen the straights. And if you have camber, you have to change the grip factor. Or if you have a very slippery or a very grippy surface, you have to change the grip value again. But then once you have that done, and you're looking at your Spec Miata records, and you're looking at your ST5 is another good one, or TT5 is a good one to like baseline things on because there's lots of data. And then you can be like, great, now I'll plug my car in and you will get an accurate lap time. But that's like a whole podcast of how to like take a free tool and make it better.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get Optimum G on to at least talk and explain about the program itself and how it's useful and stuff. But maybe you can do that for them because they haven't responded in over a week. So
I got my plate full. I'm doing a lot this year. It's like I'm doing a lot of coaching this year, and a lot of data coaching. I'm getting back into the data coaching after I made this like VMIN table, which I'm finding so incredibly useful with students. I was just up at Watkins Glen for 2 days with the Porsche Club. Porsche Metro came up with Porsche Niagara, and I've talked about this VMIN table with Bill before, and it's just essentially like a table that you can circle all your VMINs, and it should form a horizontal line if you do things correctly. But everyone who comes in has 2 corners that they suck at, right? So I'll just go after that first. One guy came in, he was doing 209s in his turbo Porsche, whatever. And I looked at his VMINs, and largely they were good. There was 2 corners, and I was like, you know what? just fix this one thing. Fix turn one. Like, you're going through at 58 miles an hour, but like based on how fast you're going through turn 7 and 8, like you should be going through this corner at 66 miles an hour. And he's like, what? And I'm like, oh yeah. He's got a Garmin, but his Garmin's telling him something, but it's not telling him how fast you can go through this corner. It's just telling him go faster than you did before. Right? It doesn't give you the limit. And I said, here's the limit. He went out in the next session and knocked over 2 seconds off his lap time. Just in the knowledge that he came to me, and I was like, that's it. And now we can work on data coaching. Now we can work on, backing up the corner, maybe carrying a little corner speed here or there, and maybe trail braking 8, whatever it was, right? But first, let's grab the corners that you're having trouble with. And everyone has those corners.
Right.
So it's data coaching light, but the results are so heavy. Yeah. So that's
yeah, even Bill and I talked about it and recorded a podcast, sort of, because I wanted to merge your VMIN stuff with types of corners in the approach. So we had that conversation. So.
Well, that's tough to do with VMIN. I mean, yeah. I want to talk to you. Yeah. I mean, I'm making a VMIN table right now for a different track, but what I do is I go through people's data and I look at which is the fastest lap. So I might see somebody that, let's say they have a 56 mile an hour VMIN, but they also have a 54 mile an hour VMIN. But I'll look at the exit speeds and I'll look at the time slip at the bottom to see which one's faster. Mm-hmm. And if the 54 mile an hour one was faster, that's the one I save. That's the one I call the expert level. The 56 was too fast because then they were later to full throttle. So you have to look at a lot of data when you make those VMIN tables. We're getting way off topic here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Anyway, so I've been busy with that stuff and making some more Aero parts. I'm making a big wing, 13 and a quarter inch cord, 71.7 span.
Oh, wow. What is that going on?
Well, it's going on my Veloster because I did a whole bunch of wing tests on my Veloster, like on the racetrack, and I didn't have any front aero on my car. I didn't put a splitter on it. I didn't put canards on it. And, of course, I have all the means to do that. But what I was trying to do is say how much more downforce, like if I just keep adding more rear downforce, does my front-wheel drive hatchback go faster or slower? And it kept getting faster, even though I was ruining the aero balance by putting too much downforce in the rear. I got 2.5 seconds faster at New York Safety Track, and I did like a high 38 or something like that. And I was like, wow, it just kind of blew my mind that it shouldn't happen. So then I was like, okay, if I put a splitter on my car, now I'm going to have to add another couple hundred pounds to the downforce to the rear to counteract what I did, like a couple hundred pounds more than the wing that I had on there originally. Mm-hmm. So, and that was a small dual wing. So now I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a huge wing because I'm going to put the splitter on the front and I need to counteract that at the same ratio. So we'll see.
Okay. That's wild.
Yeah. So that's kind of what's going on in the Occam's Racer shop. And then in Mario's life, I also have this thing I'm doing with Ross Bentley. He's coming to Pineview, my local track. Him and Peter Krause, which is like Batman and Robin or Larry Bird and Michael Jordan. I don't know who you would think they are, but I'm so like awestruck by both of those dudes. And then I'm getting to work with them on a new program we're teaching at Pineview. So I'm sort of consumed with that as well, which is awesome. It sold out in like a couple of days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. There's a 5-day class. There's a 3-day class that I think was $4,000, and there's a 2-day class that was $2,700. I don't know what it was, but I mean, people are flying out from California, or even some people from around the block. But like, it was done. Like, boom! Like Ross sent out a message, and it was sold out.
Yeah, he did. I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, it's out of the bag now."
Yeah, I know, and it was really cool because, I don't often get mentioned in the same sentence as Ross Bentley, but Ross is like, I'll be doing this course with Peter Krause and select coaches like Mario, Ian, and Korf. And I was like, oh, me and my brother Ian got mentioned with Ross. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
But we're going to have a great, Yeah. We're going to have a great time. And I think it's a different kind of course. And after we do it, we can do a download on here or somewhere and talk about how much different it is than a typical. It's very data driven. I'll tell you that much.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. Awesome, man. So, all right, where can they go to find the Miata report?
Oh, you go to my website, occamsracers.com, and there's a button that says purchase wind tunnel report because I'm that much of a self-promoter. There's 2 wind tunnel reports. The original one was $25. The new one is $35. There's so much information in those. There's over 100 pages combined. I honestly feel like it's the best $60 you'll spend. There's like nobody gives away this data. This is so cheap. And I feel like you'll learn a lot. And honestly, if anybody buys it and they're not happy, I'll refund your money. I did my best, and I think it's awesome.
I think you did a great job personally. As somebody who has to rifle through documents all the time at work, at least it's organized well, it's presented well, you give the pluses and minuses of certain things and you go over so much stuff. Yeah, it's specific to a Miata, but yeah. If you drive a Miata and you're like, I'm bored with spec this or low tier this and I'm going to do something to the car, you probably need this, at least Aero-wise. If you're going to do something Aero-wise, you need this report, in my opinion. But
well, good. Thanks. I mean, eventually it won't just be Miatas and Velosters. I hope to pull all of this information with all of AJ's information. Hello, AJ. And make a book on club racing aerodynamics. Like he has all the stuff and I have the patience to write it all up. And of course I would love to look at his data. So I want to collaborate with him on like the Bible of club aero. So look for that in the future.
All right. I can't wait for that. If it took you if it took you a year-ish to write, no, it's not a whole year, but to write 53 pages, we're going to have a problem with the Bible, but.
Well, I only started this like a little while ago. Like, I started it and stopped it. I just, do you know when I did that wind tunnel report, the first one, my wife went to Africa. So I built all the parts and did everything within 2 weeks. And then did the test and came home and wrote that whole thing up in like another 2 weeks. So for sure, I could, I can do it if I want to. I just didn't feel like it. Just didn't. Well, Colin, we've been on here for a while. Thanks for having me. Again, talking about my stuff.
Oh yeah, anytime, man. I enjoy learning, especially from you. The way you keep things organized and the way you present stuff is great. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you including me in things, reaching out. You're one of the true friends that I've met through a podcast of all things. So thanks for coming on and sharing.
Yeah, man. I feel the same way. So thanks.
Until next time, keep working on yourself, keep working on the car, and let's get faster.